References to the Church of God of Prophecy primarily reflect the organization's doctrines prior to its restructuring in the mid-1990s and may not represent the denomination today.
A secluded country church usually projects peaceful devotion, but for those raised inside certain high-control religious environments, that building operates as a traumatizing psychological cage. This is the Church of God of Prophecy, a Pentecostal holiness denomination with deep roots in the American South. For decades, leaders maintained a tight grip on congregations by claiming they were the sole pure remnant of God on earth, the one true church. Central to their theology is a pipeline called the Holiness Track. This flowchart illustrates the mandatory steps for a believer, highlighting the second step, sanctification. The church taught sanctification was an instantaneous event where a believer is perfectly holy and their innate human desire to sin is completely eradicated. This creates an immediate contradiction. If members are perfect and entirely free from the biological desire to sin, the church should have no need for the 29 teachings, a massive, hyper-specific list banning normal everyday behaviors. Looking at this historical analysis, we see the sheer volume of these behavioral microcontrols. The church audited every aspect of a member's life, combining an impossible standard of internal flawlessness with an ever-expanding checklist of external rules, traps congregants in a paradox. In order to survive, they must constantly police their own biology to maintain a strict outward illusion of perfection. This environment relies heavily on somatic control, the strict regulation of the physical body to enforce a highly visible wall between the congregation and the outside world. The restrictions placed on members' bodies, specifically women's bodies, were extreme. As this text details, they went as far as enforcing a rigid ban on all jewelry. The church defined wearing gold or silver as the sin of pride, which meant even wedding bands were strictly forbidden. This policy forced married women to enter secular workplaces every day without the universal symbol of being unavailable. Her bare hand made her an accidental target for harassment. She was left to navigate the awkwardness of coworkers who assumed she was single and advertising her availability. The ban on wedding bands erased a woman's boundaries and made the outside world genuinely hostile. This reinforced the cult's narrative that secular society was dangerous, making the church seem like the only place where they were safe. That control over the physical body extended directly to the environment through cultural isolation. The church systematically severed members' connections to the broader culture by banning all forms of modern entertainment. Members were strictly forbidden from stepping foot inside bowling alleys, skating rinks, or movie theaters. The church framed attendance at these venues as a conscious, willful rebellion that would instantly damn a person to hell. To explain how a perfect person could suddenly fail, leaders used the Satanic injection loophole. The text here breaks down their logic. Since a sanctified person couldn't generate sin internally, Satan could inject an evil thought from the outside if you entered the wrong environment. This theological loophole functioned as an invisible cage. It forced congregants into a state of permanent hypervigilance, terrified that a single passing thought would result in their eternal damnation. Because the doctrine dictated that any tiny infraction instantly doomed a member to hell, local church leaders took it upon themselves to act as violent border guards for the church's rules. Leaders used physical violence to enforce outward conformity, like the documented incident where a teenager was hit and slapped by church leaders for wearing a high school class ring and a cross necklace. The church defined normal human biological development, like a teenager experiencing attraction, as an existential emergency. This weaponized natural behavior to maintain total thought control. Enforcing a dress code through physical violence and existential dread forces congregants to suppress their humanity. It breeds deep cognitive dissonance and traps entire families in a traumatizing double life. When members finally break away and attempt to integrate into a pluralistic society, they don't just walk away free. They experience profound isolation and an ontological shock as their entire map of reality collapses. Many of these exiters suffer from religious trauma syndrome. Long after they leave, they carry debilitating symptoms: sudden flashes of panic, deep physical exhaustion, and intense hypervigilance. These symptoms are the biological aftermath of a nervous system forced to live in battle mode for decades. They are the normal, logical result of surviving a dual-layered system of severe religious trauma. The 29 teachings and the rigid bans on basic leisure functioned as highly visible compliance badges, a tool for leaders to scan a room for submission while stripping away individual autonomy. For survivors, the act of stepping out of the cage represents the reclamation of a real, beautifully imperfect human life.